Hey everyone, I'm Maddie, and today I'm going to be talking about databases for week 11 for CS 1501. So here's a little agenda of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about databases versus database management systems. Then I'm going to delve into SQL, and then I'm going to talk about the bigger picture and how databases are used in the industry. And then in a separate video and activity, you'll learn more about SQL using a tool called SQL Fiddle. And then I'm going to talk about further research that you could do on your own if you want to learn more about databases. So what is a database? A database is a collection of data in its most basic terms. And a schema is how a database is structured and how things relate to one another. And examples of this can be very small to very large scales. And the smallest could be a text file or the notes that you're writing for this class right now. And a large scale example could be a bank account database, UVA or UVA-wide student database, and Amazon's product database. So it can become very large data. And so why do we need databases? So one, like I just said, it can manage large amounts of data. So that's very important when things come to big data. It's also really easy to access and store information. It contains details about organizations or industries and also an application that an organization is using or one that they've created. So a database management system is software that creates, manages, and maintains databases. It also allows for user interaction and other applications to interact with the database and to capture and also get information and get and update information in the database through the database management system. And so some examples of this are MySQL, SQLite, PostgreSQL, MongoDB, and Oracle. And so why do we need database management systems? So it provides a way for users to actually interact with the database and ensures that the data in the database is secure. And it has a structure for the way of storing information in a database. And it reduces redundancy and handles interactions that occur simultaneously. And I'll talk about transactions within the next few slides. And so just to kind of show a more visual representation of how a database management system works so the database management system holds all the interaction from applications and users to the database. So it gets commands or instructions that the applications or users want from the database, and then it responds back once the information was either retrieved or it failed to retrieve, or it failed to make an update, or it made the update successfully. And so they do this by communicating through APIs. And we haven't really talked about APIs a lot in this class, but API is honestly just a set of instructions that applications or users could use to go to the database management system. And in broad terms, APIs are used for instructions across different software platforms. And so let's talk about some database lingo. So a primary key is very important in database, and it's used to uniquely identify data. And a foreign key is a primary key in another table that maintains a relationship between these two tables. And so like in the example below, you can see that that primary key is course ID in this table, and then course ID is also in the other table. And so that is a foreign key that maintains a relationship between these two tables. And so just having course ID, you can access tons of other information. And then a query is a single action taken on a database. So if you want to select information or update information and things like that. And then a transaction is a sequence of queries that make up a unit of work. And so you can update a database, change names to columns, etc., and all be one unit of work that you're doing on a database. And so now let's delve into SQL. So SQL is structured query language, and it's domain specific. So it only works on relational databases. And so it's not for the coding that we are doing in this class with Java, C++, and Python. And it also includes the ability to process sets of data. And this allows you to query data, update rows, create, replace, or alter objects within the table, and so much more. It's a very powerful language. So some examples of this, you can create a table and then have information in the table, like primary key, or if you want to have an ID, you can have an int in there, or if you want text or strings, you can have a bar chart, just for any information that you need in a table. And then once you drop a table, you can drop a table by putting the name of the table. Once you drop this is complete. Like this is definitely gone from the database. It forgets everything. And so be careful if you try to use this because you can't undo, you can't go back. And you can also alter the table by adding or removing certain columns if they're necessary to add or necessary to delete. And then you can insert into a table, you can insert certain values for, you can create a row in your table based on all the columns that you have. And then you can delete from the table where a certain name is, so like let's say the table column was like ID, and the ID is your ID if you want to delete your ID from the database. Then you can also update a table by setting a certain column, like where a column equals a certain value, and you can update the actual column name if it's more, like you can update it to a more specific or descriptive term. And then you can use select star or table columns from a table where the table column equals val. So if you want to learn more about yourself in a database, then you can do select star. So star is for all the columns in your table from like a class table where the ID equals your ID, and you can get information that's about you in the table. And then you can also use select sum of a table column from the table. So this is important if you have like an amount, like in a bank account database, you would have your amount in your multiple accounts. And so if you want to sum all of that together, then you can select sum amount from bank account. And so then this is called an aggregate, and there's many other examples of aggregates that you can look into later, but this is the one we're talking about right now. And then you can do select stars, select table columns from table name 1, natural join table name 2. And so this is very important in database systems. Everyone uses a natural join. And so natural join, if you think about the example that we talked about earlier with the two tables with the course ID, so they need a primary key and a foreign key to join on. And so course ID would be where they would join. And then you would join those two tables together, and then you can access more information in general. So you can access the course name, and then you can also access the student IDs and their students' first and last names as well, just by joining the table based on that primary key and foreign key. And so this is just explaining what a lot of them do, but in the demo, there will definitely be more examples that will make this more concrete. And so the bigger picture is that databases are used to support industries internally, and also establish interactions between customers, suppliers, manufacturers, and everything that's necessary to keep a company running. And then it impacts many different types of industries. So I have the health industry, financial industry, just looking here on the right, enterprise, human resources, and of course the tech industry and so much more. And then you can also use databases for web apps, so for your personal projects or internships. And so usually when you make a web app, you'll attach it to a database so that you can store user information for your database, in your database for your web app, which is really helpful. So then, yeah, I can go back. So yeah, this is really helpful to actually keep your website running and have that information that's necessary to be stored in the database. And so let's talk a little bit about the demo and the activity. So the demo would be on a SQL online tool called SQL Fiddle. And your activity will also be in SQL Fiddle as well, just to kind of get you like more familiar with SQL so that you can actually use it. And these will both be posted on the weekly activities page. So happy SQL coding. This is a very powerful language, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. And so some further research that you can do is that you can look into different types of database. So we definitely talked a lot about SQL today. There's also NoSQL databases, centralized databases, distributed databases, and a cloud database, and so much more. And then you can also learn more about SQL, as it's really cool to use to get like different types of data and really analyze and structure data to the way that you want it. So you can look at more types of joins. I only talked about one join today, and I only talked about one type of aggregate as well. But there's also an aggregate for average, for max, for min, and count, and etc. But that's all I have for today, and I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit more about databases, and I can't wait to see your responses for the activity. See you later.